book friends, what's up? How's it going? Thanks for stopping by for today's video. Today's video is on the book Before Us, There Was Him by Lou Stock. You guys, I am struggling. I am struggling hard to be able to talk about this book. I loved it so much that I start talking about it and my eyes get teary. I finished it a few days ago and I needed to give myself a little time because as soon as I started to jot down notes that I wanted to remember to talk about, I would get all teary. So stupid, but that's me. And I get like that with books that I like. And it's what makes what I do here on my channel so much fun and so rewarding, but also when I get a little verklempt and I can't talk about it, I'm like, what am I doing? I'm gonna do my best. I have already tried to record this video once and I wasn't making sense and I was crying. And so I'm gonna do it again. So here we go. Before Us, There Was Him is about Riley and Lucas. Oh my God. It just, epic first love, okay? Epic, epic, epic first love. Riley is in Los Angeles with 3 of her girlfriends. They just graduated high school and they decided to take a month-long trip together before their lives change and go into different directions. Riley is really on her own. Her parents have died. She was then moved in with her grandmother. Her grandmother died. So one of her friends, Aaliyah, they take her parents and their family, take her in. This group of friends of hers, I adored. I connected with immediately. It's Aaliyah, Amber, Kenzie, and Riley. They were so reminiscent of my friends from that time in my life, who I'm still friends with now, so many years later. I can remember that summer after we graduated high school, feeling like we wanted to soak up all the time we could together, knowing that everything was going to change. And thank goodness, here we are many years later, still friends, but I went right back to that time. And so I really enjoyed reading about Riley's friends and their trip, and then the rest of the book, their friendships as well, because we see them throughout the rest of the book. Lucas is, so Riley's 18, Lucas is 20 maybe, wise beyond his years and old for his age. We know going further in the book, not right off the bat, but we know going further that Lucas has had a really hard time. His parents, it's not good. He left home as soon as he could. It was horrible. And he has found himself in LA. He has some good friends. He does what he needs to do to put a roof over his head, but wants to travel and get out of Dodge, feels unmoored, just wants to go wherever the road is taking him in his beloved car. So they meet at an interesting time in both of their lives. They meet by Riley and her friends are basically walking down the sidewalk and Lucas is sitting on a wall outside of a house and they can kind of hear a party going on. And so they stop and immediately Lucas and Riley kind of catch eyes and she's like, wow, he's really cute. He's very handsome and he likes her too. He invites them into the party and they end up spending time at the party. Immediately, Lucas and Riley are drawn to each other and kind of go their separate way and go and kind of hide away a little bit and party and are a little physical and, you know, they like each other and they're going with it. That first night, he asks her if she would go travel with him. And she thinks about it and she's like, what do I have to lose? You know, I have nothing back in Colorado where she's from. I really like this guy, but am I crazy? But like, why not? And she says to him, ask me again at the end of my time here. So they're going to be in LA for a month. They meet pretty quick after, you know, they'd only been there a couple of days or so. So she says, ask me again later if you really mean it and you really want me to. They spend the rest of that time that she's in LA together, getting to know each other, seeing the sights. Some of their friends kind of hook up with each other. They are in the early stages of falling in love with each other. And so he does ask her again, and she agrees to go. I loved, ate up every single part of their traveling the Western United States together. The way Lou writes them traveling and them falling in love and getting to know each other and being intimate, and the connection that they have is simply gorgeous. I want to retrace their steps. I want to see the pictures that Riley talks about taking everywhere they went. Of course, they don't exist, but I want to see that. I loved hearing when they stopped in a place that I had been to. I loved all that. I ate all that up. I really enjoyed feeling that with them. That is so not like me to do something like that. So I loved reading it. The book is told from Riley's perspective. We do get Lucas, but at the very end, in the epilogue, I think it was, or one of the last chapters. So it's all Riley. And this is what she says about Lucas when they start on their journey. I trusted Lucas to know what he was doing. He'd been doing the same thing for years. He knew people, places, and situations. He understood where to find the things he needed and how to make a quick buck when he was desperate. He and I had discussed this at length during the nights we spent together, just cuddling as the stars moved overhead. I'd had questions about his life and how he managed to survive. Having no plan was new for me. I'd spent the last 2 years planning how to escape my life in Grand Junction. It was all I'd seen, the light at the end of a long tunnel. I'd convinced myself that the town was cursed. Now I was free, the end game having fallen into my lap with this gorgeous man I wanted to spend all my time wrapped up in. I didn't need a plan anymore. I didn't need to know where I was going or what I would do. I'd figure it all out when I got there. I trusted Lucas to guide me. Wanderlust tickled the soles of my feet for the first time in my life, and I had the perfect partner in crime to show me the way. And so it began, their journey. They go all the way up the West Coast, up to the Pacific Northwest. They go over into Wyoming and Idaho, Montana. They come down through Colorado. They go over to Nevada. They go down to the Grand Canyon. I was just in awe of everywhere they went. It is not without its challenges. We know what Lucas is doing. It's not necessarily legal. Riley talks about how she's just kind of ignoring that part, that she knows when she goes and he tells her to go sit in a cafe and he'll be back in a little while, that he's going to make money. And I wondered if that was going to come to bite them in the butt a little bit. I worried about that. But Riley looked at that time to go wander the city they were in. They were in small towns. They were in big places. She was taking pictures everywhere they went. She was documenting, without even realize she was documenting their love story. I loved that part of it. But I wondered, how long could they go the way they were going? I was so enamored and in adoration of Riley and how she blossomed under Lucas's bright shining light, how much he loved her, how connected and how beautiful Lou wrote them falling in love. I was in it 100% with them the whole time. But I worried, because I read the prologue, when were the wheels going to fall off the bus? When were things going to change? Drama was coming. I knew it, of course, right? I was so worried about it, though. The first kind of hiccup that comes along changes them. And not that it was all perfect and shiny. It's gritty. Sometimes they are down to no money. Sometimes they're saving up their money to spend the night in the hotel as opposed to the car. Lucas takes it on himself to do something that worried the heck out of me. I couldn't believe it was happening as it was happening, but then it happened. And this is what Riley says. I tipped my head to the side and offered a half smile. I didn't think of our situation as a bad one. At least I hadn't until Montana, but that was a different kettle of fish. I didn't miss my material possessions while we'd been traveling. I'd slept under the stars in Yellowstone Park, and I'd watched storms roll in over the wide open Wyoming sky. I'd ridden up the West Coast with a man I was in love with. In the 5 months that I'd been traveling with Lucas, I'd seen more than more people experienced in a lifetime. Occasionally being broke was a price that I was more than willing to pay for that. They then take on, and they realize that what happens in Montana shakes them up. And they know they have to change things a little bit after that. They are still traveling, but they're being a little smarter about making sure that they have what they need to keep traveling. Not that Lucas wasn't doing it, because he was, but then at some point they decide they need to stay someplace and make some money. Riley will get a job. They'll save up a little bit for 2 weeks, and then they'll keep going. So they adjusted as things came along. They have a big thing that happens. And, I don't like to give spoilers, so that's why I'm not telling you exactly specifically. But it's actually something that has happened to me. So to read Riley going through that, oh my gosh, it was heavy, very, very heavy. And it was something that really changed them as a couple. So I held my breath for Riley, and I broke when she broke, because as much as your partner, if they're amazing and wonderful, can be there for you, it's really just happening to you. And grief is a fickle bastard. It shows up in different ways when you have situations that cause you to grieve. And no two people do it the same way. And there are different levels of grief. And I understood all of it. And I understood Lucas and how he felt. And I understood Riley and how she felt. But I saw the first chink in Lucas's armor. And as much as I loved him and felt safe with him, after this happened, I didn't feel safe with him anymore. I understood it, and I loved him, but I knew something had to give. And Riley takes it on herself, but also lays down the law with him, and she's like, I will never allow you to treat me that way again. She stands up for herself, and she's awed by him all the time. Her love is definitely rose-colored glasses. It's her first love, but he pulls some stuff that had me so angry at him. And I knew he felt backed into a corner, and I could understand where he was coming from, but he broke my heart along with breaking her heart. And let me tell you, I worried. One of the things that I love so much about reading romance is when an author writes a real love story. So the stuff that comes up, the drama that Lou brings in, is very realistic. And that's why it hurts so much. But also that's why I loved it so much, and my heart was so invested in them because I got them. It felt very real. The story is very original and organic, and I just loved every word. But again, because I read the prologue, I was like, oh my God, what's gonna happen? I don't know. I was waiting for the other shoe to fall. This was the part that I dreaded happening. I couldn't fathom that it was gonna happen, but it happened, and it killed me. I was in such a good mood that I didn't realize Lucas was late until we were locking up and he still hadn't arrived to walk me back. Undeterred, I walked back to the hotel along the lakefront, my shoes in hand and toes in the sand, as I listened to the lapping of water against the shore. My mind was so lost in the idea of Lucas, and as I climbed the stairs to our floor and unlocked the door, I was about ready to ditch the plan and just jump him, only he wasn't there. It wasn't unusual for him to stay out and do his own thing. He was, for lack of a better term, a hustler. He made friends wherever we went, and some nights he stayed out playing poker or going to strip clubs to make a new connection. The only difference being that he usually let me know. There was normally a note or some kind of sign that he would be back soon. There was no note, but I crawled into bed anyway and I fell asleep, waiting for him to come and wrap himself around me like he did most nights, stinking of bourbon and smoke. I called the front desk to see if he'd left a message, but there was no information there, other than learning he'd paid for the room in advance for another 2 weeks. I hated the way that left me feeling. We never paid that far in advance for anything. It was strange, but Lucas was always looking after me, so I forced myself to believe that he was just being cautious and thinking ahead. Perhaps even putting a time limit on our time here so we could move on. Hours later, the doubt followed. I was being too dramatic. I was making something of nothing. There was no way he would leave me without talking to me. I told myself these things over and over again until I left for work. I went through a double shift, volunteering to go to close when there was no sign of Lucas to pick me up at the end of my scheduled shift. Then I went back to the empty room and felt the absence of him meld with the one that was still lingering inside of me like an open wound. I paced the floor most of the night, buying a candy bar from the vending machine at 2 a.m., then heading down to the sandy beach to listen to the lake water for a change of scenery. I convinced myself that he would be back before the little voice in my head, full of paranoia, pointed out what a pain in the ass I'd been these last weeks. I worked triples for 3 days in a row to distract myself while I waited for him to come back. I didn't sleep, pacing back and forth in the room and on the beach just to keep myself occupied. The voice of doubt in my head grew louder with every passing hour. Like the stages of grief, I moved through emotions: denial, anger, sadness, and blame. I blamed myself for scaring him away, for becoming a person he couldn't possibly want to be with. Then it started all over again when I reminded myself that the last thing that he'd said to me was that he loved me. I kept this self-flagellation up for a week, working triple shifts, pacing all night, then repeating until I came home from work one night and finally fell apart. I was so exhausted that I was starting to hallucinate. I'd been so clumsy from fatigue, I'd almost dropped a tray of food on the customer. Resigned, I settled my body down on his side of the bed and buried my face in the pillow just to breathe in the scent of him as my heart ached. The blame hit me in the middle of the night when I woke up and stared at the ceiling, my chest wide open and aching. I'd done this. I'd taken too long to heal. I'd become a burden to him. I had been too much for him. I couldn't give him the most fundamental things of a relationship from fear. How could he have ever loved me? It was at the 10-day mark that I heard the familiar growl of the Chevelle pull into the lot of the hotel as I laid awake, staring at the ceiling for yet another night. I wasn't in the pitiful stages anymore. I was angry. I talked to myself in so many circles that I was in the middle of convincing myself that I never wanted to see him again. By the time the click signified the door was being unlocked sounded, I was on my feet, hands clenched into balls at my side, ready for a confrontation. Oh my gosh. Reading her go through that, knowing that he left her, how could he have done that? There was this undercurrent to Lucas that you knew and that Lou was telling us, but like I couldn't see that he could ever hurt her. And he hurt her so much in here that it was hard for me, even though I understood him, I kind of felt like I was watching him, you know? There was a really beautiful time after this time in the book where they do settle for a little bit. And I loved reading that and the growth that they both had as people and how it kind of took their relationship to another level. And could they do this part? Could they be the settled couple in one place? This is what Riley says. Lucas allowed himself to be the man of his age when he and I were together at home, our laughter filling the small house. Music constantly played while the two of us got high and just talked about things most couples spoke about when being familiarly intimate with one another. Every time I felt myself falling that little deeper in love with him, I was always surprised. I thought I couldn't possibly love this man more than I did, but I proved myself wrong every single time. I loved our life in the Cove. It was there where I was at my happiest. Not even the months in Marathon could compare. Lucas and I were a family, and we had a life together. We worked and came home. I cooked for him, and he sometimes attempted to cook for me. We cuddled on the couch every night, danced together on the porch overlooking the ocean, while muffled music played on the stereo we'd bought with our steady paychecks. My favorite thing to do at work was to stare out of the lobby doors and watch him under the cars. He was in his element there, occasionally stopping to stand by the bay doors and look out at the ocean, his eyes sliding closed like no one was watching. There was a peace to him like this, his soul no longer ready to hit the road and search for something to quiet him, because he'd already found it here. All he needed was a surfboard, and his dream would be complete. So as soon as we got this happy time, after the hard time, I was like, okay, Lou, what now? What are you gonna do? Because I know they're up here, happy, happy, happy. What's gonna knock them down? And again, because I read the prologue and I was worried. This book follows Lucas and Riley over 5 years. And then when I got to the part in the book where the prologue meets, you know, like that spot, the present day, oh my Lord, my heart was just, oh, see, I can't even talk about it. And the thing is, anyone that was around them saw it too. The great love that they have for each other. But thank goodness, oh my gosh, thank goodness, we do get happily ever after at the end of this book. And it was absolutely perfect. It was exactly what I needed for Riley. And it was one of those things where I knew the end was coming. And so I specifically didn't read it at night because I knew I would be like a crying mess and I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep then. So I waited and I finished it the next morning when I could like have a little buffer between finishing the book, letting all of my emotions out, and then being able to sleep that night. Because I'm the type of person, when I get affected by a story like this story affected me, I will obsess over it and it will be on my mind literally for days after. It doesn't happen to me all the time, but it happens to me enough that I know what I need to do to like work through the emotions and all the feels and everything, because I get so emotionally attached. And then, you know, then the book's done and I still have to live my life. Here I am. I had to wait a couple more days till I could film the video. I just want to make sure that I do the book justice. This is one you don't want to sleep on, guys. Highly, highly, highly recommend Before Us, There Was Him. Let me know if you have read Before Us, There Was Him or any of Lou's other books. I would love to hear. While you're here, I would love for you to take a second to give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. When you do that, it not only helps my channel, but it will help this video get shown to more people here on YouTube. Thanks for hanging out with me today, guys. I'll see you soon. Bye.